over here. This is probably the biggest loss that I was most frustrated about. Another loss that taught me a lesson, especially about like selling extra stock, was in this tank. So I haven't really shown up this tank much. Oh, it could be this, it could be that, trying to chase things. You could be causing more harm than good. And we've had some additions. Now, one of the additions was not a berth, although we have had some berths, and I'll get to that in a second. I don't know where these came from. That's right, we have names for some fish in here. I'm in there, had my hand in the tank, you know, just grabbing for some snails. Next thing I know, just like he is now, whack. Today's video is gonna be a little bittersweet because we had some losses here in the fish cave, and I wanna talk about them. Now, it's not catastrophic, I didn't lose a bunch of stuff, but definitely had some losses, and I wanna address it, keep it open with you guys. I think it's taught me an important lesson, and hopefully you guys take something away from this video as well. I also want to share some good news with you guys throughout this video. No, I didn't get an Anubias hair transplant, but I will address that huge piece of Anubias floating in the tank behind me. If you're new here, welcome. I hope you enjoy the video. If you do so, please give it a like and consider subscribing. So I'm not going to fill this video with a bunch of pictures of dead fish and stuff. That's not the point of this video, but I did want to keep you guys posted on everything that's been going on in the fish cave, you know, good and bad. So if you guys remember correctly, there used to be a guppy in this tank. I actually had a few guppies from a local breeder. They were his kind of culls. They were like a Dumbo ear steel nebula cross that wasn't exactly what he wanted. So I ended up with a few for free. The last of them just passed away, and I'm really not sure why. They were all males. When I got them, they were already, you know, pretty much full grown. So it could have just been, you know, their time. All the guppies were in different tanks, and, you know, I lost them. I lost a few of them over the course of a few months. So, you know, I didn't, never lost anything else in those tanks. So, like I said, I'm not sure exactly what it was, but I didn't overreact. We also, in this tank over here, this is probably the biggest loss that I was most frustrated about. This is where I had the 3 Pandagara. If you remember, I got 3 Pandagara from Andres over at BioAquatics, had them in this tank. This tank had been set up for about a month or two, and I had some cycled sponge filters in here. However, when I dirted it, I didn't do it properly, and unfortunately, all 3 Pandagara ended up passing away. It's tough to admit that, you know, it was your fault that the fish died, and of course there's many factors, and I can't prove the exact death. I didn't do an autopsy, but you know, the shrimp in here are doing fine. The snails seem to be doing fine, but like I said, the Pandagara kind of over the course of a week, you know, just, you know, dropped 1, 2, 3 on me. So I definitely want to grab those fish again. I really enjoyed them for the few weeks I had them. And after I get this tank, you know, kind of rearranged and squared away, I'm definitely going to get them back in the fish cave. Another loss that taught me a lesson, especially about like selling extra stock, was in this tank, the dwarf Cajun crayfish. I had purchased 4 off of Reddit, and that video is coming out this Sunday, guys, I promise. But I purchased 4 dwarf crayfish off of Reddit, and within a few weeks, they started breeding for me, and I had, you know, a good amount of baby dwarf crayfish in this tank. This is only a 10-gallon tank with some shrimp, so I started, you know, putting up these dwarf crayfish for sale locally and on Reddit just for a few bucks. Well, I ended up overselling them, and I was only left with 1 male and 1 female, and then my female ended up passing away, which I think it was during a molt, and now I'm stuck with just 1 male. So not only do we have a death in the fish room here, we had a death after I had oversold the stock. So, you know, if I want to start keeping this fish and reproducing this fish or this crayfish again, I'm gonna have to find some more, which is unfortunate. The good news is, and I'll kind of, you know, turn it to the good thing here, we've had some additions. Now, one of the additions was not a berth, although we have had some berths, and I'll get to that in a second. But one of the additions here is a CPO, a dwarf Mexican crayfish. So I got a pair of these. I'm not sure if they're a male-female pair, but I got 2 of them, and I'm hoping I could breed those. And if you look over here, the parents of these little baby shrimp are actually these guys. Now, I don't know where these came from. I didn't have any really nice looking shrimp, but like I said, I literally had set this tank up. There was a few straggler shrimp that got left in here, and they turned out to be these huge, gorgeous, really red shrimp. And I don't know really where they came from. You know, I'm happy to have them. They're gorgeous. And if any of these shrimp turn out to be anything like that, then I'll be extremely happy. But just wanted to show you guys, if you look on this sword here, it's Amazon sword, you can see tons of babies. So here in the fish cave, you know, we have had some losses. but there's actually an orange one back there too. So one of these guys is spitting out some oranges, or there's an orange that I haven't seen, but definitely wasn't that. In the fish cave, we've had some losses, but we've had a lot of bursts too. So we keep plugging along. We don't want to overreact. If you guys remember the yellow shrimp that I had got from BioAquatics, they bred. As you can see, we have quite a few babies. I had originally got, I think I bought 10 or 12, and they don't all have this neon stripe, but if you look at some of the babies, you can see them developing it. So I'm gonna grow some out and see how they do. Babies up here, more births in the fish cave. These swordtails are growing quickly. I may be putting these, I may be moving these. I don't want to give it away where to, because that's kind of a video coming up, but these may be moving soon. So stay tuned for that. Quick little update, no births down here, but the Leolamprologus pulcher daffodil cichlids, some of them are getting a little bigger, starting to color up a little bit. Still not, you know, adults by any means, but you can kind of get an idea of what they're gonna look like. Also, in terms of births, we got a bunch of baby blue shrimp. If you look here, they're not all congregated. I just put these green beans in there, but there's a bunch down in here on the moss ball. I got these and they had like 1 or 2 sets of babies. I don't think I had a very high survival rate, and the snail population was going crazy. So as you can see, I added some assassin snails. That's why you see some of these ram's horn snail shells down here. So I wanted to keep the population of ram's horn down in this tank. I just feel like they were out competing the shrimp for food and stuff. So they're doing really well now that I've done that. I ended up splitting up some of the blue shrimp into a different tank. That way I can just kind of get you know, genetics going and may add some from a different source. But I definitely wanted to just, you know, really get these blues going. So I have another tank down here, and as you can see, they're loving these mulberry leaves. I've also had a few, you know, red cherry shrimp in this tank. And let me zoom in here. There's actually quite a few red cherries in here. I put some of the brightest red adults I had in here, and some of the berry ones, and just to see if I could, you know, get a little bit more of a red line going. My shrimp are okay, but they're nothing, you know, spectacular or award-winning by any means. And before long, there was plenty of babies hanging out here, but I noticed that I lost a few adults. Literally within a week, I think I lost 2 or 3 adults. And once again, I didn't overreact, which I think kind of saved me. In the past, when I first started keeping fish, you know, the first sign of a problem, I was doing, you know, a ton of water changes, which isn't a bad idea, but I was adding medications, trying to figure out salt, which I think salt has a really good place in this hobby. But my point here is, when something happens, if you have a fish die, or, you know, something starts to go wrong, before you overreact and start, you know, dosing the tank with this or changing up this a ton, be sure that it's some type of epidemic that's breaking out and not just an isolated incident. But I know that when I was trying to fight things in the past, you know, I would almost, you know, shoot myself in the foot. At one point in time, the 55-gallon Mbuna tank was actually a community tank, and I had 1 sick fish. Ended up trying to crank up the heat and add this and add that, and I wiped out the whole tank. Now, after I had set up that Mbuna tank, maybe a month or so after I set up the Mbuna tank, I lost 1 Mbuna, and guess what I did? Nothing. And guess how many more Mbuna I lost? None. So a big tip to you guys is, if something goes wrong in your tank, definitely keep track of it. Definitely be aware of it. But unless it's a pattern, do not overreact. If half of your fish are gasping at the surface of your tank, or they all look like they have ick, then by all means, do something drastic, take the necessary changes. But if you lose a fish here or there, and you just start trying to play, oh, it could be this, it could be that, trying to chase things, you could be causing more harm than good. Can we just take a second to appreciate the size of this Anubias? I don't think you guys have seen this video yet, how I got this piece of Anubias, but it is enormous. I can't take credit for growing it. It was a local guy here that I bought a tank off of, but good gosh, am I lucky to have it. Here's some more shrimp bursts. I haven't really shown off this tank much, but this is kind of like my LRB's Skittles special tank. As you can see, we got some darker shrimp, black, and we got some lighter blue, some brown or copper, and there's I think I put a few yellow in here. So we got a decent little mix, and these guys seem to be doing pretty well. They're usually scurrying kind of everywhere, and there's a few little baby bristlenose in there as well, but they're munching on their green beans, doing their thing. As you can see, there's some different sizes there, some full-grown adults, a few little babies, juveniles, etc. But this is definitely slowly becoming one of my favorite tanks with all the different colors, and I can't wait to see once, you know, some of these lighter colors start breeding in there to kind of just give it some more pop. Bert and Ernie are doing fine. That's right, we have names for some fish in here. The Midas cichlid, his name is Bert. And then over here, the pike cichlid, this is Ernie. But they've been doing fine, hanging out with the fire mouse and the two plecos in here. Don't mind the wires. Look at this huge Anubias. Remember, that fish is almost a foot long. So this Anubias is at least a foot long. Let me see if we can see it from the top here. It is just, it's gorgeous. I mean, it's got some algae, what have you. The guy said he had been neglecting it a little bit, but look how thick. The rhizome is ridiculously thick. But I got it with this tank over here that has a bunch of fish. I'm gonna do a video on this, probably getting this tank and some of these fish in here. I'm gonna keep some, I'm gonna give some to some friends and what have you. But definitely subscribe if you haven't already. I'll do a video on that. And when we got this big Anubias plant and what the plans are for that. Definitely gotta find it a new home before Bert and Ernie here make a snack out of it. There's a better look at Ernie. But like I said, these two fish are really growing on me. I actually learned my lesson the other day. I was grabbing some snails out of here, and like I said, the biggest fish I've kept before these guys were like 3 or 4 inches. And so I've never really worried about getting bit per se. So I'm in there, had my hand in the tank, you know, just grabbing for some snails. Next thing I know, just like he is now, whack. But that's what happened. I screamed like a little girl. I had no idea what was going on. It took me like, you know, a second and a half to realize that the fish had just bit me. And I realized, okay, yeah, I can't just be sticking my hands in random tanks anymore. A lesson learned to definitely respect your fish, especially the monster fish. And the other lesson is that, unfortunately, just as with keeping any other pets as well, you know, death is part of the equation. Sometimes we can prevent it, sometimes we can't. But the big thing is, when it does happen, don't overreact. You know, assess the situation and then take the necessary actions. See you guys in the next video. This Sunday we're doing the giveaway for 500 subscribers. Stay positive, stay passionate.